Picture this. It's today, June 10, 2026. You walk into a pub in Bristol to watch the World Cup match. You step up, order a standard pint of beer, and the bartender asks you for £5.50.
Right, which is, I mean, it's a lot.
It's a ton. Naturally, you think they're just ripping you off. But what if I told you that pub owner is actually making zero profit? And the reason your beer is so expensive is driven by the exact same economic gravity that is currently squeezing, like, the world's most advanced microchips.
It is a wild connection, but it's completely real.
So today we are unpacking a really fascinating stack of material to figure out exactly who captures the money leaving your wallet. We've got fresh data from the UK's National Audit Office,
Yeah.
retail labor statistics, tax analysis from the hospitality sector, and this really revealing interview with the world's most important technology supplier.
Yeah, because to really understand this, we have to look past inflation as just this broad, abstract percentage. Like when we hear about a 16% inflation rate over the last 4 years, that number kind of, smooths out the reality.
Yeah, it hides the mechanics.
Exactly. What we are actually witnessing is this aggressive structural repricing across the board. The cost to manufacture a microscopic silicon chip and the tax burden loaded onto your pint of beer, they're both driven by these massive upstream cost shocks. The supply chain has basically digested all these expensive hurdles over the last few years, and the bill is finally arriving at the consumer's doorstep.
And arriving in some really varied, sometimes entirely hidden ways. So let's start with that £5.50 pint. Millions of fans are heading to pubs right now for the World Cup, and they are getting serious sticker shock.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, think back to 4 years ago during the Qatar 2022 World Cup. The average price of a pint in the UK was £4.03. Official statistics place today's average at £5.50. That is a 36% jump.
Which vastly outpaces the overall inflation rate of 16% for that same window.
Right. And over a 20-year horizon, beer prices have skyrocketed 128%. Average prices for other stuff only rose 77%. So, wait, if prices are up nearly 40%, these pub owners must be making a killing right now, right? Are they just using inflation as an excuse to pad their margins?
That is the intuitive leap for any consumer paying that £5.50. But the data tells a completely inverted story. We are seeing textbook margin compression.
Margin compression, so like a vice grip.
Perfect analogy. On the top jaw of the vice, you have the maximum price that you, the customer, are willing to pay before you just say, forget it, I'll stay home and drink tap water.
Right.
And on the bottom jaw, you have the rising cost of ingredients, energy, taxes.
Right.
Margin compression is the pub owner being crushed in the middle until there's literally zero profit left.
Wow.
Yeah. Landlords like Rob Moore down in Pensford or Nathan and Ronnie Freeman, who run a sports bar in Bristol, they're absorbing so much upstream costs they're making nothing. Moore actually stated he has paid no corporation tax for 4 years because his business is not generating a single pound of taxable profit.
That's crazy. The revenue is just entirely devoured before it even hits the bottom line. So the pub almost functions as this giant tax collection agency that just, happens to serve beer on the side.
That's exactly what it is. Because when you look at the raw inputs, these landlords are dodging a relentless barrage of supply shocks. The energy and oil spikes from the wars in Ukraine and Iran, those drove up the physical cost of brewing.
Like the actual harvesting of barley.
Right, the barley and producing the CO2 needed to carbonate the drinks. And then you layer on government policy. The chancellor previously widened the net for national insurance contributions, which effectively captured virtually every part-time bar worker.
So it just raised the baseline cost of simply having someone stand there to pull your pint.
Precisely. But the tax burden is where the structural imbalance really punishes the UK hospitality sector, especially compared to the rest of the world. Emma McClarkin at the British Beer and Pub Association analyzed the excise duty, and the disparity is just severe.
Let me guess, the UK is way higher.
Way higher. The UK charges 54p a pint just in beer duty. Now compare that to the nations they are playing in the tournament. Spain and Germany charge just 4p.
Wait, seriously? 4p compared to 54p?
Yep. Only Morocco has a higher duty at 90p.
That is wild. 54p just in duty, and then we add a 20% value-added tax on top of that.
Exactly.
So roughly £1.50 of every single pint you buy goes straight to the government. German pubs pay a 7% VAT. French pubs pay 10%. No wonder the margins are crushed.
It's so intense that the Freeman brothers in Bristol, they actually had to entirely wind down their kitchen operations just to survive.
Oh, wow. They just stopped serving food.
Yeah, they eliminated a core part of their business model simply to focus on drinks where they still barely break even.
Okay, so that dynamic on the high street, where physical commodities and regulatory costs squeeze a local business to the absolute brink. You mentioned earlier that this exact same upstream cost pressure mechanism is hitting the foundation of the digital economy.
It really is. We just have to shift our focus from physical barley and CO2 to silicon and intellectual property. The pricing leverage shifts dramatically, but the inflationary pressure is identical.
So if physical commodities are crushing local pubs, what happens when we look at the other extreme? Like what happens to the biggest, richest tech companies in the world when their core ingredients get more expensive?
Right. Which brings us to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
TSMC.
Yes, TSMC. They manufacture the most advanced chips on the planet, the hardware designed by Apple, AMD, NVIDIA. Their chief financial officer, Wendell Huang, went on the record confirming inflation is heavily pushing up their cost of doing business.
And their CEO, CC Wei, has clearly signaled to shareholders that they want to raise prices, which is interesting because we are constantly told that artificial intelligence will make everything exponentially cheaper and more efficient. So why are the literal brains powering this AI revolution getting significantly more expensive?
Because TSMC represents the ultimate example of pricing power. It's born from what Huang calls technology leadership and manufacturing excellence.
Mhm.
I mean, building a semiconductor fabrication plant requires tens of billions of dollars in capital.
Plus the hyper-specialized machinery.
Exactly. And an incredibly highly trained workforce. Unlike the pub landlord who has zero leverage against the cost of barley and, can't just infinitely raise the price of a beer without losing you as a customer.
Right, because I'll just go somewhere else.
Exactly. But TSMC can command its price. They are the undeniable bottleneck for the global AI infrastructure. So the inflation they experience in raw materials, extreme energy usage, and specialized talent, it's simply passed down the chain.
But the buyers can actually afford it. Huang explicitly denied the AI boom as a bubble, and he pointed directly to the financial profile of those specific clients, the hyperscalers.
The massive cloud providers and tech giants.
Yeah, they have the enormous war chests required to absorb these price hikes. And TSMC is currently expanding its footprint into the US, Germany, and Japan. Crucially, Huang stated this expansion is driven entirely by customer demand. He is totally pushing back on the narrative that they are merely bending to geopolitical pressure from Washington or Beijing. The customers are just begging for more capacity, regardless of the price tag.
And the friction in that global expansion is exactly why TSMC's pricing leverage is locked in for the foreseeable future. The United States enacted this massive industrial policy, pushing TSMC to commit $165 billion to operations in Arizona. But Huang clarified that moving the actual manufacturing ecosystem away from Taiwan will take 5 to 10 years.
Or possibly longer, right? Because you can't just build the main factory and call it a day.
Right. You need the companies that manufacture the specialized chemicals, the testing equipment, the microscopic components. They all have to move as well. It is an entire localized supply chain that took decades to build in Taiwan.
So he made it clear the most cutting-edge production will just remain there.
Yes. The hyperscalers have no alternative. They must pay whatever TSMC dictates to maintain their own competitive advantage in the AI race.
Which is fascinating. And hey, just a quick reminder, you can find Financial Candy, Brain Candy, and classic audiobooks at clearandhoratio.com.
So looking at the contrast between those hyperscalers and normal households, the financial divide becomes really stark here.
Yeah, tech giants have billions in cash to absorb TSMC's price hikes and pass those costs along. But if you are an everyday consumer, you possess zero leverage when inflation hits your most basic infrastructure: water, energy, and broadband.
The National Audit Office released a report mapping exactly how this consumer vulnerability plays out. By March of 2025, UK utility debt had soared past £7 billion, and estimates suggest it has only grown since then.
£7 billion just in utility debt.
Yeah, energy debt alone jumped 118% following the initial 2021 energy shocks tied to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Which ties back to the upstream shocks we talked about with the pubs.
Exactly. We are seeing a massive accumulation of arrears because households simply cannot absorb the same structural repricing that corporations are just passing along. The mechanism of inflation at the household level translates directly into unsecured utility debt.
And the really frustrating part is that the utility sector's relief programs basically function like a restaurant's secret menu.
That's such a good way to put it.
The financial assistance exists, but the utility companies are certainly not printing it on the front page of the bill. Only a third of eligible broadband customers and 39% of water customers who are actively struggling are even aware cheaper social tariffs exist.
Right.
So if you are paying a broadband bill right now, you might be one of the millions totally unaware a discounted rate is sitting right there in the regulatory framework.
It is a classic market failure of information. The assistance is funded, it's available, but the regulatory bodies Ofgem, Ofcom, Avawat, they are failing to connect vulnerable populations with the existing tools.
The communication just isn't there.
Not at all. The National Audit Office found that customers who actually get on repayment plans owe £1,000 less on average than those drowning in debt without a plan. The friction is entirely in the communication layer. Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown, who chaired the Commons Public Accounts Committee, pointed out that poor communication and basic billing errors needlessly trap households in debt.
Because consumers are bombarded with these estimated bills that don't reflect actual usage.
Yes, and when the true bill arrives, the sudden spike pushes them into arrears. And rather than getting clear instructions on how to access a social tariff, they just receive standard debt collection notices.
The human impact becomes incredibly clear when you look at an example from the source material. Linda, a 70-year-old pensioner relying on a state pension. Her energy meter credit frequently runs out days before her pension arrives.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, she is caught in this cash flow mismatch dictated by unforgiving billing cycles. And awareness of the Priority Services Register, which is a UK-wide project meant to identify customers with extra safety or access needs during events like power cuts. Awareness of that remains shockingly low.
So these systems exist to protect the most vulnerable, but the bureaucratic friction prevents the relief from actually reaching the wallet.
Exactly. And the convergence of all these financial pressures creates a perfect storm at the very bottom of the labor market. The rising costs squeezing high street businesses like those pubs cutting back their kitchen staff to survive.
Right.
Combined with the rapid advancement of the AI tech sector prioritizing digital efficiency, they are systematically eliminating entry-level jobs.
Which are the exact roles young people rely on to pay their initial bills, avoid that utility debt we just talked about, and actually enter the economy.
And the labor data totally confirms this evaporation. Over 1 million young people in the UK are now classified as NEETs. That's N-E-E-T. Not in employment, education, or training.
Over 1 million.
Yeah. That equates to 1 in 8 youths. It's the highest level recorded in over 12 years. I mean, think about the entry-level jobs you applied for when you were 18. Many of those specific administrative, retail, or hospitality roles simply do not exist in the same volume today.
They've just vanished.
And this brings up a really fascinating paradox regarding the government's response. The government is rolling out AI tech training for 400,000 disadvantaged students. And on top of that, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is trialing an AI assistant explicitly designed to act as a job center in your pocket for job seekers, offering 24/7 application guidance.
Wait, so...
Right. Are we seriously just using AI to help kids apply for the exact entry-level jobs that AI and runaway business costs have already destroyed?
That is the paradox right there. The Alan Milburn review actually warned of a potential lost generation due to this sharp drop in entry-level roles. The review cited factors ranging from the pandemic to smartphones, but ultimately pointed to a shrinking opportunity landscape.
So what's the fix?
Well, to counter this structural deficit, the private sector is attempting to patch a public problem. Marks & Spencer is launching a paid traineeship targeting 1,000 16 to 24-year-olds over the next 18 months.
Okay, so a dedicated program.
Yeah, the scheme is designed to build store managers without requiring a university degree. It is the direct intervention to create a career ladder where the bottom rungs have basically been sawed off by margin compression and automation.
When you contrast that private sector initiative with public policies, the shifting burden is so obvious. Past approaches, like former Chancellor Rachel Reeves' policy offering guaranteed work placements for the long-term unemployed, those relied heavily on the existence of a stable, expansive entry-level tier.
And that tier is shrinking rapidly. Microsoft UK CEO Darren Hardman actually issued a severe warning regarding this dynamic. He stated the UK's performance in diffusing technology is merely okay. And without a rigorous focus on AI fluency and social mobility, the country risks leaving an entire generation behind in the global tech race.
So, synthesizing all of this, what is the core takeaway for the listener today?
The underlying economic story connecting these disparate data points is a massive, inescapable structural repricing. The raw material costs and heavy taxation squeeze the pub owner, forcing them to stop hiring and shut down kitchens. The inflation in manufacturing and the unyielding demand from hyperscalers squeeze the global microchip supply, locking in high-tech costs for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And the resulting shift in the business landscape squeezes the entry-level job market, leaving over 1 million young people stranded without a clear entry point into the workforce. The mechanisms of money are just adapting to a more expensive, higher-friction reality across every tier of the economy.
Here is a practical curiosity to consider as you navigate this shifting landscape. If AI is rapidly becoming the primary tool job seekers use to optimize and submit their applications, and simultaneously, it is the primary tool corporations use to filter and reject those same applications.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Oh, how long until the job market is just two AI systems negotiating with each other in milliseconds, while the human just sits at home waiting to see who won?
That is a fascinating and slightly terrifying thought.
Thank you for joining us to unpack the unseen forces shaping your wallet.